Today, I'm going to discuss a topic that I think is an extremely potent way to help tax departments, corporate in-house tax departments, optimize their tax department budgets. And I can promise you one thing, no one has ever approached this concept from this perspective. And I'll explain why in a minute. You have most tax department optimization strategies being put forward by tax accounting advisors from the public accounting firms for the most part. And they take the initiative to try to leverage one of the two major cost centers for tax department budgets. And the first one is going to be the internal staffing costs. And their approach will be to somehow reduce the internal staffing cost to a tax department through either they outsourcing or co-sourcing either all of a department or part of a department function, or utilizing technology to reduce man hours to get a process done. I want to start off by first saying that none of that is a negative in my opinion. I think you should always take a look at reducing your internal staffing costs because it is either the number one or number two cost for your department budget. So I think that approach is fine. Now, I will talk about in an article that I've posted through TaxTalent that I'll refer to at the end of this conversation, that I do not believe in full outsourcing of tax functions. And the article covers that in detail, so I'm not going to be redundant here. What I am going to tell you is the other area for costs that most people do not discuss and certainly will never be brought up by the public accounting firms is going to be your consulting fees. And again, it's either the number two or the number one cost, depending upon the year your tax department is dealing with certain transactional situations that hits your budget. So the irony of it is, but it's not ironic because you know they have no vested interest to attack that area, is going to be reducing the consulting fees. In the past, number one, they didn't drive that initiative. Number two, there really wasn't many viable options for you. You can go from one public accounting firm to the other public accounting firm, but quite frankly, the cost would be minimally different. The service would be minimally different, similar. That's why people, in fact, you could have somebody working for you on the account with one accounting firm one day, and 2 weeks later, they're working for a different accounting firm doing the same functionality at approximately the same fee. You know, the analogy to that, which I'll make in a minute, will be like going from one taxi cab to another in New York City. They're not much different. So what's changed? It's technology. It's an openness towards what I call the gig economy. And that's where the Uberization started with low skill levels like transportation and drivers. And yes, you could go from one taxi cab to another and it wasn't very different. But if you went from taxi cab to an Uber situation, it was dramatically different. The cost was much cheaper. Quite honestly, the cars were cleaner and nicer. And the service was even better. It took a while for people like myself to get adjusted to it, where my kids adapted to it immediately. But once I got into it and I saw it, I was a captive client. Now what's happened is the ability for these gig economy with technology there behind it to elevate up to more higher level skill set roles. So we're seeing highly technical areas move to gig economies. Tax is probably towards the tail end of executing and implementing this, but clearly the IT field has used this for decades, engineering for decades, the medical field for decades. You don't go to an emergency room and work for anybody who works at the hospital. 9 times out of 10, they're on a per diem working to a third-party staffing company, and they're gig employees, they're independent contractors. So this has evolved. It's now even started to get into fields very similar to tax. If I reference a company called axiomlaw.com, if you go to AXIOM law, LAW.com, you'll notice that this organization is basically leveraging the gig economy. And with that, they have now serviced over 50% of the Fortune 100 companies. By the time I retire, they're on target to be the largest legal provider in the world. So this is not something that is just starting out there. We have proven processes and models to go from, but in tax, it is just starting. There is really only one national player out there. It's one of our sister companies, taxforce.com. The article will talk about that as well. That being said, I do not expect it to be the only player in this field. It will grow. You'll have many other options. I also am not telling you this is going to be a replacement for public accounting in any way whatsoever. There are things you need a public accounting firm for and a tax consulting firms for, but there are many things that can be better done utilizing independent contractor talent pool. The ability to bring people with corporate in-house experience to the table, who can hit the ground running, who have actually technology platforms that are going to look overqualified for the role, which means they're going to over-deliver, and you're going to get a value proposition you can't get anywhere else from an advisory service. The rates are going to be a heck of a lot cheaper. You're not paying for all this overhead, which is why Uber is so much cheaper. And again, the other platforms, I've given you examples in other professions, work on both quality of improvement and cost reduction. So I encourage you to please click on the link below and access this article that we've put together here. It's titled How World-Class Tax Departments Reduce Their Budgets with Just-in-Time Labor. And again, the analogy is, you guys all know about just-in-time inventory. The supply chain changed our world, and has and always will. But just-in-time inventory lends itself to just-in-time labor, and it's going to change things. You'll have another tool in your tool chest, again, not replacing public accounting, but you will optimize your department, reduce your budgets, and it's going to free up that revenue for you to do one of three things. Number one, wake up your finance committee and say, hey guys, I'm going to give back part of my budget. They're going to love that if you can do that. You're also going to probably negotiate a certain portion of that to help you develop and retain your existing internal staff, get more value out of them, improve their skill sets, and make them happier so you have less turnover, which reduces your cost of budget dramatically. And then, of course, you're going to have the opportunity to tackle value-added projects that you've been sitting on the fence that were maybe too costly to do with an outside accounting firm. But either your internal staff can now be freed up by using independent contractors to free their jobs up and let them grow and develop on those projects, or turn it over to highly skilled independent contractors that are vetted and screened by these third-party services. And yes, to summarize it, you do need a third-party company. You need somebody to vet, qualify these candidates, make sure they are actually what they say they can do here and produce the results. And you do need to make sure that you have yourselves legally protected. They should either be a W-2 employee through a third-party company, which is what we do at TaxForce, or a corp-to-corp, where there's one corporation they've set up and they adhere to all of the IRS compliance issues. We also offer that service as well through TaxForce. So one of those two are your only ways. Do not get involved with 1099s. It's just a nightmare waiting to happen. That's it on this report here. When you do click through on the article, if you have questions about the TaxForce model, there will be a reference to Gareth Davies. He's our executive director over that group. Feel free to talk to him on a no-obligation basis here going forward. Thank you, everybody.